Tonight on Ukraine Today, a promising summit in Davos. What should we expect from the meeting between Presidents Zelensky and Trump? Did it actually bring peace any closer? The fate of the world is being shaped in Switzerland. Who is talking to whom? What has already been agreed at the World Economic Forum? And why is this event so important? The decline of international institutions. Why is Trump's so-called Peace Council is a stillborn project? All this and more, coming up right now. Hello, my name is Volodymyr Robchun and this is Ukraine Today. Please subscribe, give this video a like, and let's get straight to the news. We begin with the peace process, without inflated expectations. President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zeleński, met with his American counterpart, President Donald Trump. The meeting took place in Switzerland, on the sideline of the World Economic Forum. The office of the president described the meeting as a good one. Why did I decide to start with this story? Let me explain. Just 2 days earlier, on Tuesday, January 20th, President Zelensky told journalists that he would go to Davos only if there were energy aid packages on the table or a meeting and concrete decisions on additional air defense. What do we see now? At least one condition has been met: the meeting with President Trump. I wouldn't rule out that soon we may also hear about energy support packages and air defense systems, but as I said, no inflated expectations. We are watching how events unfold. Earlier, the Ukrainian delegation met with U.S. envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, as well as with representatives of BlackRock, one of the world's largest investment companies, involved in plans for Ukraine's reconstruction and economic recovery. At the moment, envoys Witkoff and Kushner are heading to Russia. They are expected to hold talks with Putin and his representatives regarding the latest proposals on a peace plan. According to Steve Witkoff, after the Moscow meeting, negotiations will continue in Abu Dhabi. Since we're already talking about global issues, it is worth paying closer attention to what is happening in Switzerland. Without exaggeration, this is where the fate of today's world is being discussed. Who is talking to whom, and what has already been agreed in Davos? All the details next.
U.S. President Donald Trump arrived late to the economic forum in Davos because his plane was forced to return to Maryland due to a malfunction. But after arriving at the forum in Switzerland, the head of the White House continued to put pressure on the old world. Europe is moving in the wrong direction. In recent decades, the continent has become problematic. I want to negotiate the purchase of Greenland. Europe is destroying itself. We want strong allies, not seriously weakened ones. We want Europe to be strong. If in recent years the forum was seen more as a talk show where heads of state held abstract discussions, today the event is regaining its status as a platform where leaders will determine the global balance of power. Unfortunately, the question remains. The issue of Greenland has pushed Ukraine into the background. So a day before Trump's speech, French President Emmanuel Macron condemned a world without rules and the endless escalation of new tariffs. He stated that he prefers respect over brute force. Furthermore, he earnestly called on the nations of Europe not to simply give in or surrender to the harsh and unjust law of the strongest powers. The mechanism for countering coercion, this is a powerful tool and we should not hesitate to use it in today's challenging circumstances. All these statements by the President of France were directed specifically at Trump's policies regarding the island of Greenland and tariffs. The Financial Times, citing its sources, wrote that the signing of the so-called Ukraine Prosperity Plan at the World Economic Forum. In Davos, it was postponed due to deep disagreements between politicians from the European Union and the United States. I
would not want to exaggerate the sense of panic. Many publications are already reporting that there is a Washington chat in which the leaders of European countries have already coordinated and are trying to coordinate their actions in advance, given that Trump is known for his unpredictability.
Given the current situation around Greenland, Russia is trying to sow even more discord in the relations between the US and Europe. Thus, on Tuesday, Trump's representative Steve Witkoff met with Putin's envoy Kirill Dmitriev on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos. Witkov described the talks with the Kremlin representative as very positive. The Kremlin's envoy also commented on the outcome of the meeting. The meeting
was constructive, and more people were realizing the correctness of Russian policy.
From the Ukrainian side, the new head of the president's office, Kirill Budanov, arrived at the forum. In his speech, he emphasized that efforts to find ways to end the war are being made by both the Ukrainian side and the United States of America. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zeleensky did not come to Davos due to the recent missile strikes on Ukraine. The tension in Trump's rhetoric towards Europe regarding Greenland gives Russian representatives a chance to establish a dialogue with Trump. And they will try to take advantage of this opportunity to return to the world stage.
First, to get back into the circle, whether through Dmitriev or by any other means. Second, the objective was to assist Trump in his efforts to shift the political focus away from the conflict in Ukraine toward the acquisition of Greenland. And third, if it were possible, the goal was to drive a wedge between the nations of Europe and the United States, specifically by using that same influential circle of actors to influence their relations.
The World Economic Forum in Davos will continue until Friday, January 23rd. And despite the scandal surrounding Greenland and the failed signing of the economic agreement between Ukraine and the US, Trump and Zelensky may still meet in Switzerland given that the head of the White House has expressed such a desire.
Now to the front line. Ukraine's defense forces in the Donetsk region have cleared the village of Sukhetske from enemy forces. This is the Pokrovsk district, where the situation remains extremely tense. Unfortunately, the enemy has also made some advances. More details about the situation on the battlefield in the report.
The Russians are experiencing chaos at the front, and friendly fire is becoming the norm. This was reported by the Kharkiv military group. It is noted that in their area of responsibility, occupiers from the 82nd Motorized Rifle Regiment of the 69th Division often come under friendly fire. During the simultaneous advance of fighters from the 1st and 3rd battalions to the same position, 2 were wounded. The enemy's rifle battalion is under constant strikes from artillery and UAVs. The assault groups are disoriented, confusing their routes, abandoning the wounded, and opening fire on their own drones. At the same time, the new Russian tactics, intended to reduce their own losses, seem to have had the opposite effect for the Russians, according to the Ukrainian command. By advancing in small assault groups, the occupiers are effectively deprived of the ability to evacuate the wounded. After all, this requires several people. In other words, the whole team would have to go back, which the Russian command does not allow. As a result, the wounded are simply left on the battlefield.
Ukraine's strikes have become more painful. Again, these are also strikes on logistics. Everything here can be connected, all elements of a single chain. So in fact, there are fewer wounded now because the logistics of evacuation have been disrupted, for example, or let's say the supply lines, those evacuation and logistical routes, and the corresponding Russian structures responsible, among other things, for the wounded, and so on and so forth.
Most of these cases have recently been recorded in the southern direction. That's exactly where Russia is now trying to achieve the greatest results, but as a consequence is suffering the greatest losses.
Donbas only in miniature. In exactly the same way. All along the critical Donetsk-Zaporizhia highway, they are persistently trying to move through our vulnerable rear areas, entering from the exposed flanks and from behind, while simultaneously attempting to bypass the strategic Orikhiv direction from the southwest by forcefully breaking through our established defensive line. They are actively attempting to encircle and secure a significant advantage. But the stubborn resistance in Huliaipol itself is currently putting these plans into serious jeopardy.
It's not easy for our soldiers, even in the main direction of our success, Kupiansk. Despite the fact that the Russians have been almost completely driven out of the city, they are still trying to infiltrate it using proven routes, analysts say.
According to Ukrainian military sources, the Russians regained access to the pipeline after the Ukrainian operation to blow up its underwater section. and they continue to use it for the regular transfer of soldiers. In turn, the Ukrainians closely monitor all possible exits using drones and begin to eliminate the Russians as soon as they appear outside. As a result, there are significant accumulations of corpses at the exit points of soldiers of the armed forces of the Russian Federation.
A battlefield strewn with corpses is not something Ukraine is close to, and the Ukrainian armed forces are partially revealing how they managed to preserve their personnel. For example, the day before, fighters from the 3rd Army Corps spoke about a unique operation in which a single ground drone, for over a month, held positions on its own that would otherwise have required 6 soldiers to defend.
The machine fired almost continuously whenever Russians appeared, thus protecting the Ukrainian soldiers who were positioned behind it. The drone required technical maintenance and resupply of ammunition every 2 days. And the crew took shelter 4 kilometers from the front line. Each time they would briefly leave their positions to service the drone, which took about 4 hours. So yes, there was a certain risk, of course, but it was significantly lower. Because in this way it was just 4 hours every 2 days. Otherwise, they would have had to stay at their positions around the clock for all 6 weeks.
At the same time, while repelling assaults at the front, the Ukrainian armed forces do not forget about Russian rear areas. Just in the past day, a wave of explosions swept through both the temporarily occupied territories and Russia itself. In particular, a UAV warehouse was destroyed in the Luhansk region, as well as yet another oil refinery across the border.
The consequences are obvious. The military, it's all clear here. UAVs and the same storage tanks. This reduces the Russian army's ability to conduct reconnaissance, as well as to maneuver in the coming days. And of course, to carry out corresponding strikes.
At the same time, in Donetsk region, they also managed to blow up an ammunition depot. In
the occupied Debaltsev in Donetsk region, there was a fire. Ukrainian public pages reported a strike on the ammunition depot as reported by Astra. For example, the Ukrainian channel Supernova shared videos in which the distinctive sounds of ammunition detonating can be heard.
Meanwhile, major changes are brewing in our Ministry of Defense. The new minister, Mikhailo Fedorov, stated that units are being created within the armed forces of Ukraine specifically to hunt down Russian drone operators. In addition, drone assault units are already being trained.
As I understand it, this refers to assault troops who operate with direct support and accompaniment from drones. We've seen such actions more than once, and they look very effective. Because drones can almost immediately strike any shelter where defenders are hiding. In addition, Fedorov stated that one of Ukraine's strategic goals in the war is to kill 50,000 Russian soldiers per month. Last month, 35,000 were killed. All these losses have been verified on video. If we reach the figure of 50,000, we'll see what happens to the enemy.
Ukraine is fighting for freedom. Support independent Ukrainian journalism so we can keep telling the truth about Russia's war. Click the link in the description to become our sponsor. Now is a perfect moment to subscribe, give this video a like, and share it. Thank you, and glory to Ukraine. Over the past day alone, Russia has lost at least 1,070 troops killed and wounded. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, total Russian losses now stand at 1,230,810 invaders. In addition, over the last 24 hours, Ukraine's defense forces destroyed 9 Russian tanks, 5 armored combat vehicles, 53 artillery systems and dozens of other pieces of enemy military equipment. In my view, the list of critical Russian losses should also include strategic targets destroyed or damaged by Ukraine's defense forces. Next, how Ukraine defends itself and resists Russian terror.
Russia is once again under fire from friendly drones. But there's a catch.
A missile just flew right past my face.
In this footage, you see a Russian air defense missile, and it was supposed to protect, but in the end, it hit a residential building in Krasnodar.
It looks like I won't be going to work for the next week or even 2.
Strangely enough, the official version is that it was a Shahed drone strike. And unofficially, Russian air defense has switched to the side of Ukraine and justice.
And we're not talking about outdated air defense systems, but specifically about the new ones, which, according to Russian classification, have no analogs I should also note that the statistics on strikes against residential buildings, and especially the main locations of these strikes, are impressive. Moscow, Moscow region, Khimki plus Belgorod. This is the clearest confirmation that the Russian air defense system is flawed.
But unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, it turns out that Russians should be more afraid not of Ukrainian attacks, but of their own unpredictable missiles.
To say that this is an accident is already more of a pattern in the actions of the Russian air defense system. And this is far from an isolated incident. We can recall a similar situation when even a civilian Azerbaijani aircraft was shot down in the skies over the Russian Federation.
While some Russian missiles fall on their own homes, others, already strike missiles, are launched by Russia at Ukraine. One of the goals is to leave the country without electricity and heat, especially now in winter. But this is exactly where the boomerang starts to come back. The city of Oriol is under attack, its fuel and energy infrastructure targeted. And to top it off, there's no electricity for full immersion in the atmosphere. By the way, it's not just Oriol. Belgorod had its share of excitement too. Or more precisely, the Michurinskaya CHP. Ukraine is responding with strikes on Russian energy infrastructure. Substations, thermal power plants. In short, facilities that serve the war effort.
A whole range of issues is addressed at the moment when the energy infrastructure on the territory of the occupying country is hit. This creates social tension, but first and foremost it reduces the capabilities of the Russian military-industrial complex. In other words, it effectively halts the operations of Russian defense industry enterprises.
And even after all this, Russia continues to claim that everything is under control, without any...
Let us now take a much closer look at all of the specific and intricate details that are currently being presented right here on the screen for your thorough review and consideration. This can be achieved through the provision of various detailed explanations, comprehensive clarifications, and thorough insights to ensure that every single aspect of the subject matter is fully understood by the audience without any lingering confusion. The strategic measures and actions taken by the Ukrainian side in response are currently yielding a positive effect.
Sometimes it seems that it's not just Ukraine taking revenge on Russia anymore. Even an ordinary winter becomes a challenge that the system can't handle. Even on the 6th day in Kamchatka, the snow remains just as it was. And it seems the authorities have no time for this at all right now. Although maybe there's simply no one left to clean it all up. After all, everyone was sent off to the so-called special military operation a long time ago.
This is the second floor of the building. And those are the windows of the first floor. This is the entrance down to the building.
Even the shopping center in Novosibirsk couldn't withstand such disgrace. It literally collapsed under the weight of the snow. In Russia, every crisis, missiles, snow, blackouts, ends the same way. The system isn't ready, but officially everything is under control. A country that spent years preparing for war doesn't know how to live in peacetime. And sometimes Ukraine isn't even needed for this collapse to happen.
The occupiers struck Kryvyi Rih using missiles and drones. They targeted residential areas and infrastructure facilities. At least 11 people were injured, including 3 children. Around 10,000 consumers were left without electricity. In addition, Putin's terrorists attacked a residential high-rise building in Dnipro with a drone. The Security Service of Ukraine has detained 2 agents of Russia's GRU, the military intelligence of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. They were collecting intelligence on the aftermath of the Oreshnik missile strike in the Lviv region. The suspects are 64 and 22 years old. They will face trial. Finally, about the decline of international institutions, even those that have barely been created. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, following French President Emmanuel Macron, has refused to join Trump's so-called Peace Council. Why? What exactly is this organization, and what do Putin and Lukashenko have to do with it? The answers in the report.
US President Trump is creating a new organization called the Council of Peace, which, according to him, could replace the UN.
Maybe it actually will. I mean, the United Nations just hasn't provided any help at all. I'm a big fan of their potential, but it has never been fully realized. The organization was supposed to resolve all those wars that I ended up resolving myself. And I never turned to them. It never even occurred to me to go there. But they were supposed to resolve all those wars themselves. Still, the United Nations should continue its work because the potential is enormous.
Invitations to the new organization were sent to several dozen countries, but so far there are only a few who are interested. France and Norway have already declined to participate. The United Kingdom and Italy also plan to refuse. Trump has already started threatening French President Macron over this.
That's what he said, but no one really cares because he'll be leaving his post very soon, so just know everything is fine. But if he thinks it's appropriate, I'll impose a 200% tariff on his wine and champagne, and he'll join.
So far, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Hungary, and Belarus have confirmed their membership.
And he started with all the dictators, all the ones he invited first. Everyone is either already a dictator or striving for the maximum, aiming for dictatorship, for the usurpation of power. But China wasn't invited, and, well, a lot of other countries weren't invited either. And of course, Trump is threatening everyone who doesn't want to join his club. In other words, Trump already sees himself as the ruler of the world.
It seems Trump plans to be the lifelong chairman of the World Council, and this worries potential participants.
This council will be unlike any other. The leaders of the largest countries will take part in it. And it was a great honor for me to be elected chairman of this World Council. And I think you will see something that no one has ever seen before. There will be no other gathering of participants like the one we are about to announce. Everyone wants to join us.
It's also still unclear exactly what the billions in contributions that the American president is asking for permanent membership are supposed to be used for.
This is Donald Trump's private club, where he is the chairman and where he makes all the decisions. An entry ticket, a permanent membership. Joining this club costs $1 billion and in cash, according to Bloomberg. $1 billion is quite a large sum. To hand it over to Donald Trump, in other words, it goes straight into his pocket. He himself is the chairman, he appoints his successor, and he will be the one making decisions in this club. So in theory, everyone is supposedly equal, and they can probably even express their opinions, but in the end, Donald Trump will make the decision anyway.
Ukraine was also invited, but they are hesitating to respond since among the invitees is the Russian dictator and other leaders of states that support the war.
Yes, indeed, President Putin also received, through diplomatic channels, an invitation to join this peace council. At the moment, we are studying all the details of this proposal, and we also hope to have contacts with the American side in order to clarify all the nuances.
Canada is also still hesitating, but it is already known that they do not intend to pay $1 billion for membership.
I think you heard from the Prime Minister about the intention to join this peace council. Many details still need to be worked out, but one thing is certain. Canada will not pay for membership.
Just like the Belarusian dictator Lukashenko, who stated that Trump would judge him based on expertise, not finances.
If you cooperate and work well for the sake of peace, then you can keep working even without $1 billion. I'm aiming for the latter. If there were something worth paying $1 billion for, I would pay it. But if they want to get my service, just like from others they've invited, and also get $1 billion, well, even Trump didn't allow himself that. So it's a complete lie that we are supposed to take away some $1 billion. Absolutely nothing is needed.
For now, it looks like the prospects for the new organization are rather unclear, especially in light of the fact that the leaders of truly strong and successful countries in the world do not want to join it.
That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Thank you for your support. Strength to Ukraine's defenders. Glory to Ukraine. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. See you next time.